Well, President Trump has left the NATO summit in Turkey. Ukraine and Russia was expected to be a focus of the meetings, but discussions were dominated by new strikes between the U.S. and Iran. Trump says he thinks the ceasefire is over. ABC's Karen Travers has more.
Hours after threatening to continue U.S. strikes against Iran, President Trump saying he doesn't think this will lead to a return to full-scale war.
No, I don't think it's going to start again. I think it's going to go very quickly.
Earlier today, the president signaled the ceasefire deal he signed with Iran just 3 weeks ago is dead. He declared negotiations with Iran, quote, a waste of time.
We can play games, but I'm not sure I want to make a deal. Let's just finish the job.
But when asked how he now plans to get Iran's nuclear material and reach a deal on its nuclear program, the president said,
well, we've already got the nuclear material because it's so far underground, nobody's going to be able to get it except us.
The U.S. and Iran traded strikes this week, the third round of attacks since that ceasefire agreement was signed. The U.S. hitting Iranian air defense and coastal surveillance systems, missile and drone launch sites and port facilities, and 60 Iranian small boats, according to U.S. Central Command. The strikes in response to Iran targeting 3 commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran overnight firing back, launching attacks targeting U.S. military sites in Bahrain and Kuwait. Ukraine was supposed to be a key focus at this NATO summit, the escalation with Iran overshadowing President Trump's meeting with President Zelensky. But the president indicating more U.S. help is on the way for Ukraine, allowing them to make Patriot air defense systems.
We're going to give a license to you to make Patriots. That's pretty cool, right? This way you can't complain that we're not giving them enough.
President Trump today again insisting that President Putin wants to end the war in Ukraine. But when pushed on what Putin would concede to make that happen, the president couldn't say. Karen Travers, ABC News, Ankara, Turkey.
Within the last hour, U.S. Central Command announced it began launching new military strikes against Iran. Part of the CENTCOM statement says these strikes are designed to, quote, further degrade Iran's ability to threaten freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. And oil prices are up today after spiking as high as 6%. According to maritime intelligence firm Kepler, 41 ships passed through the strait yesterday, up 36 from the day before. But with the threat between the U.S. and Iran escalating, it puts the ships trying to navigate the strait at risk again. Kepler warns the focus has now shifted to security, compliance, and risk management.
Anytime if we hit Iran, oil goes up a little bit. It's all right.
Any long-term disruption to the flow of traffic in the Strait of Hormuz is expected to surge gas prices as it did leading up to the temporary truce. Today, the national average for a gallon of regular gas is $3.80, according to AAA. And the average here in Iowa is $3.48 a gallon. Maine's Senate Democratic nominee Graham Plattner is expected to announce whether he's ending his campaign after a rape allegation from a former girlfriend. Plattner has denied the accusation. Sources say campaign advisors no longer believe he can remain in the race, and a decision could come as soon as today. Plattner has 5 days to drop out to be removed from the ballot. State Democrats would have 2 weeks to select a new candidate to challenge longtime Republican incumbent Susan Collins. The executive director of the Democratic Party of Maine says that Plattner's team reached out and now accuses him of trying to dictate the next steps.
Unfortunately, Graham Plattner's team has repeatedly reached out to us in an attempt to put their thumb on the scale of what this process looks like. We have repeatedly reiterated to Graham Plattner's team that they have no role in determining our next Democratic nominee.
Plattner's campaign denies trying to influence what comes next. Over 20 senators are calling on Plattner to drop out. Any possible path for Democrats to take back the Senate heavily relies on Maine's race. Today, a federal judge ordered the release of $5 million to E. Jean Carroll, despite President Trump asking for the money to be held while he asked the Supreme Court to reconsider its denial of his appeal. Carroll was awarded the money by a jury who found Trump liable for sexually abusing Carroll. Trump denies the claim. Hours after the decision, Trump filed a notice with the court planning to appeal the release. A federal appeals court will not reverse a judge's order to remove President Trump's name from the Kennedy Center. Trump argued taking his name off the building would dampen fundraising efforts for the performing arts institution. He claimed the Kennedy Center's bylaws would require it to return contributions it brought in unless his name was put back on. The appeals court says that claim was not made when the case was before the district court. A May 29th ruling blocked plans to close the center for renovations. The appeal of that ruling will continue. Interior Secretary Doug Bergman says crews began draining the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool Sunday to start renovations and repairs. It's the second time in 3 months that it's been drained. Bergman says they started draining the pool as planned after the July 4th fireworks show. It comes after weeks of problems, including algae blooms, green water, chipping bottom, and allegations of vandalism. A building's support columns buckled in New York City, sparking fears of a catastrophic collapse. The building was the headquarters of Pfizer and was being converted into apartments. Overnight, workers installed new steel and seemed confident the building was no longer at risk of imminent collapse. The developer says the columns bent under the weight of added floors. In the last year, the building had 7 safety violations.